Imagine stepping into a really rare kind of conversation, one that sort of pulls back the curtain on life's deepest truths, right? Shared by the people who know them best, those reflecting in their final days. What insights would they give us about, a life well lived? And maybe more importantly, what would they wish they'd done differently?
It's a perspective, yeah, that very few of us ever really get. And our source for today's deep dive, Bronnie Ware, she provides exactly that. She's an Australian writer, singer-songwriter. But for years, she was a hospice carer, actually
Yeah.
sitting there, at the bedsides of people dying, hearing their most private thoughts.
And it started small, didn't it? Like a blog post, the top 5 regrets of the dying, which then just exploded globally, gained massive traction. And that huge kind of unexpected response, that's what led her to write the full book. Her unique position, that access, it gave such a powerful, unfiltered look at these universal human things.
Absolutely. So our mission today is really to unpack these fundamental regrets, but not to be depressing or somber about it. It's more like using them as a kind of roadmap, for living a more fulfilled, more authentic life. Starting now, we want to explore not just what the regrets are, but the why behind them. And crucially, what actions you listening can take to maybe avoid them yourself.
Okay, let's dive into this then. What I find fascinating looking at Bronnie's work is how incredibly consistent these lessons are. They come from so many different lives, different backgrounds, but they transcend culture. They really seem to point towards what truly matters, at the end of the day.
They really do.
Yeah.
The first one, and this was apparently the most common one she heard, overwhelmingly so. I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. That really speaks to the deep pain of suppressing who you really are, your desires, your values, pushing them down to fit in, whether it's family expectations, society, your job.
Oh, that idea is it's heartbreaking, isn't it? Not
Yeah.
living true to yourself. I immediately think of Grace from the book. I mean, she literally waited her entire life, waiting for freedom from her husband's smoking habit, which tragically is what led to her own terminal illness. And then he passes away, and almost immediately she's diagnosed. Too late. Too late for her dreams. What is it about those external expectations? Why are they so incredibly hard to break free from, even when you know it's costing you?
Well, it's often this really complex mix of fear, isn't it? Fear of disapproval, maybe fear of failing if you try something different, or just, fear of the unknown path. We see that so clearly with Anthony, this young guy from a big deal business family. He felt this huge pressure to be what they wanted him to be. And despite being smart, his self-esteem was apparently really low. Then after some physical damage from his own choices, he just didn't have the courage left to even try for something better. He became, as Bronnie put it, a product of his environment, just sleeping his life away in a nursing home, dying young. His biggest failure, she felt, wasn't even the past mistakes, but that complete surrender, that refusal to even attempt to improve. It's heavy, just the cost of not pushing back.
But then there are these glimmers of hope, these transformations in the book, too. Like Rosemary, her heart was, hardened by life, societal pressures, a difficult divorce. She actually became really successful business-wise in a man's world back then. But she was miserable, even condemned Bronnie for being happy. What shifted for her? How does she manage to turn that around?
Rosemary's story is so powerful because she eventually allowed herself happiness. She realized it was a choice. Bronnie describes it as almost like a physical act of smiling deliberately. And over time, that led to real, actual laughter sometimes in her final weeks. It really highlights that happiness isn't always this thing that just happens to you. Sometimes you have to actively choose it, build it. And Bronnie herself went through this, right? She talks about leaving her banking job. She was desperately unhappy there, even though she was technically a success by default. And ending a relationship too, because their core values were just too different. That's her living true to herself.
It really does pose a vital question for everyone listening, doesn't it? What expectations are you living under right now? Are there maybe places where you're not quite honoring your true self? Maybe subtly, maybe not so subtly.
And that leads quite naturally into the second big regret. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. This one really points to the profound cost of putting work above everything else, above relationships, your own well-being, other joys in life. It's not about hating your job, necessarily. It's about where your life's focus, your energy truly goes.
Oh, this one. Yeah, this hits home for so many people. I think maybe myself included sometimes. You see it so starkly with John in the book, working relentlessly, putting off retirement for 15 years for just one more deal, while his wife Margaret was just longing for his company, for them to have time together. And the crushing part, she dies shortly after he finally agrees to retire. Before they got to do anything they planned, he literally said he was lonely for the whole of my retirement. It makes you realize, doesn't it, that every one more deal isn't just delaying something good, it's actively erasing time you can't get back with people you love. It's that cost of absence that really gets you.
Absolutely. And the deep insight there isn't just, work less. It's recognizing that those moments you trade for work, especially the relational ones, they're non-renewable. They vanish. They don't just pause and wait for you to finish your career. It's about remembering work is part of life, a potentially fulfilling part, but it shouldn't be the entirety of it. That balance isn't some kind of luxury item. It's fundamental to avoiding this kind of deep, aching regret later.
And often, I suppose, suppressing who we are or suppressing what we really feel, maybe to keep the peace or fit in at work, that can lead to other regrets too. That unspoken truth. It takes us right to the third common regret. I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. This covers that deep pain, that isolation that comes from holding back, suppressing emotions, important truths, things you needed to say. It leaves you feeling kind of unknown, even by those closest.
It's such a difficult one. Think about Yassi's story. His family was in what Bronnie called mass denial, telling him constantly he was getting better, shielding him, they thought, but really isolating him from the truth of his own dying process. He secretly told Bronnie about his pain, his frustration. He just longed to be known, to be understood, to acknowledge his reality. And he died feeling his family never really knew the real him or what he was going through. It's not just about having difficult conversations. It's about that fear of vulnerability, isn't it? We often choose sort of service harmony over genuine connection. And in doing so, we dig these emotional ditches that later we just can't cross.
That's a really powerful and, tragic lesson. And Jude, she was a younger client with motor neuron disease. She kind of echoed this, didn't she? Even though she'd made a tough choice earlier in life, sacrificing her relationship with her mother for something she never regretted, she really emphasized telling people you love them, you appreciate them. Now, don't wait. She actually wrote a letter to her difficult, stubborn mother, knowing she might never get another chance. It's that urgency waiting often means never.
Exactly. And Bronnie's own life reflects this learning curve, too. She said Joseph's pain really pushed her to be braver in expressing her own feelings. And she also learned the flip side, receiving help, accepting vulnerability. She talks about being in a really rough spot, even homeless for a time. And it was being willing to express her need, to be vulnerable, that actually led her to getting the job caring for Jude. She realized pride, or maybe fear of how people might react, it holds back so much vital expression. And accepting help is part of that expression, too.
Yeah, the book really stresses that guilt from things left unsaid is genuinely toxic. So this regret is about finding that courage bit by bit to be vulnerable, to be open, which ultimately leads to healthier relationships, doesn't it? And more inner peace. But what about the relationships we just let fade away?
Yes. That brings us straight to the fourth regret. I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends.
This one highlights that really deep loneliness that can creep in when we neglect friendships over the years. It's not usually a sudden thing, more like a slow, quiet drift.
The story of Doris here is just incredibly moving. She was described as literally dying of loneliness in her nursing home, just starved for human touch. And Bronnie managed to track down her long-lost friend Lorraine, that phone call between them. Bronnie describes it as just pure joy, a reconnection that brought Doris so much comfort, understanding, acceptance right at the end. It really slams home how vital that connection is and how friends offer something different. It really does.
Yeah.
And then you have Harry, who offered some pretty direct advice on this. He was someone who did actively keep up his friendships, a wide circle. And he stressed how important it was to keep like-minded company. For stimulation, for acceptance, he basically told Bronnie, make time for your friends regularly. Make it a priority. He saw it as crucial self-care, especially for avoiding loneliness among people your own age. Friends often meet different needs than family, They can be a mirror to your true self sometimes, away from family dynamics. They offer a unique kind of validation.
So it's a really clear call to action then. Value those friendships, nurture them, don't let them just wither. They offer this unique, essential kind of companionship, something even family can't always provide. They remind us who we are outside our other roles.
And finally, that brings us to the fifth regret. I wish that I had let myself be happier. This one's a bit different. It centers on realizing that happiness was often a choice they didn't make, maybe believing they didn't deserve it, or always waiting for something external, the right job, the right relationship, retirement, to finally deliver happiness.
Rosemary, who we talked about earlier, she fits right in here again, doesn't she? Learning that happiness wasn't just a passive state that might descend upon her. It was an active choice. Even that simple physical act of smiling could actually start to shift her feelings. It almost sounds too simple. How can happiness be a choice when life throws so much at us?
It's about recognizing the agency we have over our internal world, I think, even when the external world is difficult. Kath, who Bronnie called the philosopher client, she really embodied this. In her last days, she saw every day as a gift, found delight in tiny things, like a bird singing outside her window. She really emphasized gratitude, appreciating what you already have, recognizing that this moment, the one we are in, is really all we ever truly possess. It's a fundamental shift from I'll be happy when X happens to how can I find or choose happiness or at least peace right now in this?
And Bronnie's own story here is incredibly powerful. Her battle with severe suicidal depression. She talks so bravely about learning to accept her feelings, even the darkest ones, finding gratitude within the darkness, and eventually realizing that happiness was indeed a choice. A self-made miracle, she calls it, achieved through things like self-kindness, meditation, just persistent, gentle effort. I love that analogy she uses, self-worth being like a globe of delicate glass that needs regular, gentle cleaning by yourself.
It deeply challenges that common idea that happiness is, a destination you finally arrive at after enough struggle or success. Instead, the book suggests it's about conscious effort, choosing gratitude, acknowledging your own worthiness of joy right now. It's a practice, a continuous gentle tending, not some finish line you cross.
Beyond these 5 specific regrets, Bronnie's work is just threaded with these broader philosophical insights, isn't it? They weave through all the stories. One that really jumped out at me was Charlie's wisdom on simplicity. Why did he think people work too hard? And how does simplifying connect to being happier?
Charlie's take was that people often work too hard because they're chasing material things, possessions, driven maybe by a fear of not having enough or just that societal pressure to accumulate more and more stuff. He believed, and Bronnie seemed to embrace this too with her more nomadic choices later, that simplifying your physical life, clearing out the clutter, reducing external demands actually creates more inner space, more room for happiness. It's not just about tidying up. It's about reclaiming the mental and emotional bandwidth that constantly acquiring and managing stuff takes up. It allows for more presence, more contentment.
And Pearl's insight about purpose and meaningful contribution, that really struck me too, finding an emptiness in her work because it lacked true purpose. How did she see purpose? What did she think was the most important contribution?
Yeah, Pearl saw purpose as something more than just earning a paycheck. She had this idea that money flows best when it's connected to an honorable intention, meaning your work should ideally contribute something positive, whether to individuals, the community, the world. And for her, interestingly, parenting was one of the highest forms of contribution to society.
Yeah.
Shaping the next generation with love and intention, it prompts you to look at the why behind what you do every day, beyond just the financial transaction.
There's also such a strong undercurrent of acceptance and forgiveness in the book. Often, it seems, it's harder to forgive ourselves than anyone else. What did Bronnie learn about that from her own life and from her clients?
Oh, absolutely. Self-forgiveness is often the biggest hurdle. Bronnie writes about needing to forgive herself for past mistakes, past lies, choices she regretted. And she saw her clients grappling with this too, forgiving themselves for words unsaid, opportunities missed. But it also extended outward to accepting the imperfections in others, understanding that sometimes their actions come from their own pain or limitations. This dual acceptance of self and others, it seems presented as absolutely vital for finding inner peace and letting go of that corrosive resentment.
I also found the theme of interconnectedness, and particularly receiving help, quite moving. Bronnie herself seemed to find these miraculous solutions, as she called them, often came through other people when she was in need, like getting funding for her music album or finding Doris's friend against the odds. It really shows how much we rely on each other.
It really underscores that we're not meant to do life entirely alone, are we? And significantly, many of those breakthroughs came when Bronnie allowed herself to be vulnerable, to be open to receiving. It highlights the importance of that human connection, not just in giving support, but in being able to accept it graciously from others. It's a two-way flow, a network of kindness that can lead to really unexpected good things.
And the book really boils things down sometimes to this core, almost poetic idea. The mind knows no answers, the heart knows no questions.
Yeah.
What does that really mean, do you think, in the context of avoiding these life regrets?
I think it's a powerful call to trust your intuition, your gut feeling, your deepest knowing. The mind, it can analyze endlessly, rationalize, spin in circles with doubts, weigh pros and cons based on external logic or fear.
Hmm.
The heart, in this sense, just knows what brings you joy, what feels authentic, what aligns with your true north. And the courage to actually follow that heart knowing, even when the mind is screaming objections or doesn't seem logical, that seems to be the key to living a life that feels true and avoiding those deep, fundamental regrets later on.
Lastly, there was a really interesting observation Bronnie made about society, about how we tend to hide death away. What are the consequences of doing that?
It's a really significant point she makes. By sort of sanitizing death, hiding it away in institutions, we lose vital opportunities. Opportunities for emotional and spiritual preparation, not just for the person dying, but for their family too. Conversations about legacy, about unresolved feelings, about making peace, they often get pushed aside or avoided altogether, because the focus becomes almost entirely on the physical aspects of care. And this leaves so many crucial things unsaid, so many emotional needs unmet, right up until the very end, which tragically contributes directly to the very regrets we've been talking about.
Wow. So we've really journeyed through these profound insights today, drawn from people right at the end of their lives, revealing these common threads of regret that actually offer us incredibly powerful lessons for how we live now. The wisdom distilled here really underscores courage, finding balance, being authentic, nurturing connections, and consciously actively choosing happiness.
Absolutely. And the source, Bronnie Ware's work, it powerfully emphasizes that this potential for fulfillment, for pleasure, for a life well lived, the very things many people only grasp clearly in their final moments, that potential is actually available to you listening right now, in this moment. So here's a thought. If your future self, the one looking back at the end, could see your life today, knowing what truly matters, what one choice, maybe small, maybe big, would they encourage you to make now to live a life with fewer regrets?
This deep dive, we hope, has given you a shortcut to some powerful wisdom, but the real change, the real transformation happens when you take these insights and apply them. So we really encourage you, reflect on what resonated most deeply with you today. What story, what regret, what insight really struck a chord? And maybe consider just one small, courageous step you can take, starting today, toward living a life that feels more truly aligned with your own heart.